Hey, what's up, guys? Ivan here. Welcome to Music Color, the place where we're helping you to boost your producing and marketing skills while watching or learning with. On this channel, we're sharing with you our producing experience, also showing you cool tips, tricks, marketing strategies, free courses, and many more. So if you're new here, consider subscribing because we have new video every week and new giveaway every 2 weeks. That's right. Every 2 weeks, you have great chance to win great plugins and studio equipment. To be effective at getting your music out there, you have to understand the current landscape of music industry. If you don't, you're not only doing yourself a disservice, but you're setting yourself up for failure. So what is it? What is the status of the music industry? Well, for the past few years, we've seen a sharp decline in CD sales. We've seen a almost complete saturation of talent in the major and independent music labels. And what we are seeing, it's a very difficult time for the artist or songwriter to enter the music industry. But please don't let that deter you from trying. Keep trying, because if you're armed with the knowledge of the problems in the music industry, and you're armed with the knowledge of the tools that are available to you in this day and age, you can move forward to success as a musician or songwriter, or as a both. So first, let's step back and let's look at historical models of how artists introduce themselves into the music industry. For many years, artists would book their own shows. They would play at venues, at clubs, at coffee shops. They would maybe spend the money to record a single or EP, all geared toward building a fan base, maybe making some money in the process of selling CD, but ultimately they get the attention of a record label or any other person or producer, somebody that would eventually be able to provide a contract or recording contract or a publishing contract for that artist. Not much has changed in the past 30 years for that approach. Artists today are still playing coffee shops and concert halls, clubs, and everything in between. They were still trying to sell their own CDs, making them on their own, with their own money, and because of the technology now, it's become much easier for artists to do that. And they're also ultimately trying to get the attention of a label or another person or producer with the goal of getting signed to a publishing or a record deal. The problem is that even the record industry has changed drastically, the artist's approach to the industry has not changed really. Some artists are exploiting all of the new tools and the available venues for getting their music out there, but many of them are not. So what we're gonna do is look at some of the venues and then help you get the best approach to entering this market. So the first thing you're going to look at the major labels. What are the major labels? Who are they? The major labels in US are Universal, Sony, BMG, Warner, and EMI. And when you hear the words kicked around, I'm signed to a big label or major label, those are actually, it's one of those 5 that we are talking about. What's the approach that you're gonna take with a major label like those? The approach is going to be trying to gain the attention of somebody that can give you a contract, whether it's A&R rep, an executive, somebody within that company that's going to be able to provide you with the opportunity to share your music. But one thing that artists often forget is that those labels are businesses. First, they're looking to make money. So when they look at you as an artist or band, they're looking for the amount of money that they can make from you. They're going to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in your career, and they want to make sure that those are good investment. And when artists forget this fact, they move on to just the talent aspect of their career. The artists believe that they're talented, and this is sufficient to get them a record deal or publishing deal. But it's not true. How do you approach those labels with the business concept in mind? One of the ways is by developing a very broad and strong, consistent fan base. You can't come to a major label with 5 or 10 fans that come to every show and hope that the major label is going to look at you as a good investment. What you need is a consistent, solid fan base that comes to every show, that there is a large number of people and their tools now, particularly with the internet, that you can use to develop that, and we will get into that in a few moments. But first, look at your fan base. The second part, look at your CD sales. Artists for a long time have been trying to make their own CDs to sell and then to put money in their own pocket. But now more than ever, it's important that you're showing those major labels that not only you have fans, but you have fans that will buy your CDs. If you have sold 3 or 4 units since you've been on the road touring at different clubs or different coffee shops, the labels aren't going to be impressed. But if you can show that you've sold 100,000 units on your own without distribution, the label are going to look at you as a potential great investment. So, the 3 things that to consider when approaching a major label, or at least considering approaching a major label. Number 1, do you have the talent? You have to have the talent to rise above the average musician. Number 2, are you bringing to them aboard a fan base? Can you show that there is a market for your music in this particular genre? And also, the third part, are you selling CD? This is going to be a significant fact in their decision whether or not to sign you. But how do you get their interest in the first place? The tried and true ways are often what works. You need to be on the road, and that may be local, that may be within 50 miles or 100 miles of your residence. The point is, you need to be playing shows as often as possible. You need to be developing your skills. You need to develop your fan base. You need to interact with your fans. This is the key for people to know you, who you are, because in this town, in the music industry, people talk. And when you're connected with your fans, when you're doing a lot, when you're out there playing and recording, the music labels will take note of that.
The next venue, you're gonna look at the next entry point into the music industry. That we're going to look at the independent labels. What is an independent label? For our purposes here, an independent label is any label other than our big 5 that we were mentioned before. Now, that's a pretty broad scope, And the reason why is because there are very large independent labels and there are very small ones. But in this industry, no one looks to the independent labels, whether large or small, as being a major label. So just for the sake of nominal nature, you need to understand the independent labels are anything other than the big five. The approach to the independent label is very much similar to the approach to major labels. You need to have the talent, you need to have a solid fan base, you need to be able to demonstrate a market and success in selling your materials to customers. The approach is supposed to be slightly easier. There is supposed to be less competition, but there is not. Just as the major label are saturated with qualified talent that has a demonstrated market, many of independent labels, particularly the target ones, are most important ones with influence in mind, who are fully saturated with talented artists who have demonstrated fan base and market for their music. So your approach, even tough, it's going to be similar to have to understand that it's not easier now. It wasn't easier before 5, 10 years ago. Has definitely changed in the independent market. But one of the benefits of the independent market is you will have a broad scope of genres, specific labels that you can submit your materials to, or that you can try and gain an interest in. And that's one of the benefits that the independent market provides for the artists that the major market can never provide. The major labels are very limited in terms who is available to you as an artist to submit your materials to where to have 5 majors. You may have hundreds of independent labels that provides you with a lot more opportunity to get your music into the right hands. So approaching the independence, never look at the independent label as being something less than major. Never take the approach that the independent label is something different than a business that's looking to make a profit. Do everything as a professional as you would is if you're approaching a major label and you will set yourself up for success. So we've looked at major labels and we've looked at independent labels. And before we jump into the electronic music world, let's talk about self-promotion. And what I mean by self-promotion is setting yourself up, whether you're a solo artist or a songwriter or a band. As being the record label, the publisher and the distributor, you're doing all those things and you can have a very lucrative career as an artist. If you're doing it all yourself, the key there is to understand what your limitations are and to understand the market that you're operating in. So how do you do that? You're doing essentially the same thing that you would do to attract attention from a label. So you're playing shows, you're marketing a CD and selling them, you're building a fan base, but you're focused on different areas. You can't focus just in playing music. So with the labels, you're trying to actually gain the attention of somebody that will offer you a contract with self-promotion. You're promoting yourself and you're marketing a career for yourself to market to make money for yourself. Your perspective is different. You're looking to promote yourself and to make a career of your own. And that's really the sole difference. Otherwise, it looks very similar to our approach to the major or independent labels. So now, let's move on to the internet and electronic delivery, because I think that's where a lot of your strength in getting your music out there is going to lay at this time. The internet has provided limitless opportunity for you as a musician as a songwriter, as a recording artist, and as an engineer or whatever. To get your music out there into the hands of the public, and what is it in the hands in the public, you're more likely to get into the hands of the label. But one of the great things of the internet is that you have those multiple opportunities that you can exploit. At the same time, you can have a website, you can have a SoundCloud or MySpace or whatever there you want to promote yourself. You can have any number of sites, and there is nothing to stop you from having hundreds of thousands, ton of different sites where your materials will be available. But component to what is being able to sell your music, to get it out there, we have those digital delivery tools like iTunes, Spotify, and those are very important. They're part of your tool chest, and if you will getting your music out there, that's just great. But how do you do it? I can go by and list the sites that are currently active and all people know them. But it's more important for you to research, find out right now what's going on the internet, find out what sites are producing musicians or promoting good musicians, and become a part of it. The key here is do your research and find all the venues that you're capable of becoming a part of them. And the cost is relatively nothing. You will pay almost nothing, but you will get maybe the best possible benefits of promoting yourself. So don't just stop in MySpace or in Spotify. Don't stop just by creating your website, because we all know how to do that. We all know how to do is to research and find out all of the hundreds, if not thousands, of the other sites that are out there promoting artists. As your research, you will find that there are those websites, those places for your internet presence that have a smaller niche market, as a smaller niche genre as your music may fall into. And when you do find those opportunities, you're competing against less people. And so the attention is potentially more for you. So research that. I can't stress it enough. When you're dealing with the internet research, and place yourself in as many possible scenarios for promotion as possible. With that, you're also looking at digital delivery tools like iTunes, like Spotify, as I mentioned. It's not only the one. There is like thousands out there. They all operate with certain similarities in mind. Although the technology may be different, although the actual distribution and the way that the customer actually gets your music may be different. The point is, they exist to get your music into the hands of the customer. So again, you need to research. You need to find out what those digital delivery tools are, then find a way in. They are much easier to approach than the labels. The criteria for you to get your music in is a much lower threshold than it is for the major labels. And certainly you're competing against thousands and thousands of other artists, other songwriters, other record artists, but your chances rise to the top with your determination, your research, and your placement across and across and across the internet. So the day arrives in contracts in your hand, and what you're going to do with that. Well, before you look at the specific term and evaluate those, what you want to do is consider that you have an opportunity to get your music into the customer's hands, to have your dreams achieved. And one of the things that's common with artists is that they look at the contract, and maybe it's from an independent label and they were hoping for major label, or maybe it's a lower independent label and they're hoping for higher independent label. But the point is that it's not exactly what they are hoping for. There is one thing to keep in mind. Is that what their deal is on the table and it is on a table and the rest of the opportunities that are out there may not come. And if you don't do it, it may take a time. So it's important for you to consider that even if the contract is not exactly what you've been hoping for, even if the terms are not exactly what you'd hope for, or even if the opportunity with the specific label, whether it's independent or if it's major, it's not exactly what you'd hope for, consider the fact that it's a solid offer and that you need to consider taking it to further your career. If you don't want to fall into the trap of holding out for an opportunity that may never come. So with that, let's move on to some of the common terms that you're going to see, whether it's a recording agreement, or a publishing agreement, and understanding those terms. Contracts in the recording industry can be simple. They can be complicated and they could be everything in between. There are one-page deal memos and there is 60-page record agreements. So consider first what you have in front of you and what you're going to do. Is just look at about 5 of the common provisions that you need to at least understand to have a good grasp of what they mean, so that you know if you can evaluate this opportunity, if it's right for you or not. First, we're going to look at provisions of grant of rights, and we're going to look at the tandem with the scope of services. And I will explain what I mean by that. A grant of rights is where you're granting of somebody else, a publisher or a records label, the rights to use something that you currently own. With a scope of services, it's looking perspective. You're granting somebody the rights to your services on an ongoing basis for a limited duration. And so even to those are two different terms, they can be understood together in the sense that they're accomplishing virtually the same thing. You're going to give up rights to a record label or to a publisher. So let's look at that, and I may use the term scope of services or grant of rights interchangeably. I'm talking about the same concept. First, when you see the provisions, what you're looking for is what you're giving up with the grant of rights. The assumption is that you either own a record or that you own a song, copyright, or more, hopefully more than one, and that you're giving a publisher or a record label rights to that material. Now, as a copyright owner, you have a full set of exclusive rights. And let's just name a couple. You have the exclusive right to duplicate your materials, the exclusive right to publicly perform your materials, and those rights are divisible, meaning I can grant one person the right to duplicate my materials and let's say on a CD. And I could also allow another company to duplicate my materials, let's say on an MP3 format. And I'm able to divide up my exclusive rights among different people and exploiting it in different ways. When you get your contract, what you want to do first is look at this and this section, the scope of the services / grant of rights section, is what are you giving up? We first identify property that you have, if it's songs or sound recordings. Are you giving up rights fully and completely to those, meaning that the label or publisher can do whatever they want? They can duplicate, they can distribute, they can perform whatever they want to do. Are you actually giving up full ownership of those materials? Are you just licensing the rights? So, in other words, you can't actually transfer ownership, which means the label or the publisher now becomes the physical owner of that copyright. Or you can give them the right to use your exclusive rights, to exploit your exclusive rights while you always retain ownership. Now, the standard major label contract is always going to seek the broadest rights. It's going to seek either either full ownership, or it's going to seek full licensing of all rights. Typically, that's going to be fine because a major label can do things that you will never be able to do by your own. But there may be an offer from independent label that has a very good distribution arm. And with that, obviously, they have the ability to duplicate, and they will require the ability to duplicate. But you may have another interest from another party that has a very strong ability to publicly perform. Now, this could cause conflicts. But the point is to consider that if a label is capable of doing it all, it's not necessarily harmful for you to give them the rights to do it all, because you have to always consider the fact that you may not be able to do that effectively as the label will. If you retain any of your rights, but when you do have a circumstance, maybe there is independent label or maybe a small publisher that does exist, that does not have the network or the finances to do anything or to do everything well, you may want to consider withholding certain rights to give to the other companies that can exploit those in a better way, in a more effective way. So when we are looking at this term, we're looking at the what are you giving over now? Now, that's from retroactive in terms of what you own. Now let's look at forward moving in terms of the services that you're going to render. The typical recording agreement is going to require you render services as a recording artist, meaning you're gonna make albums, you're going to perform, you're going to stay in the studio, you're going to ultimately deliver a physical album, a physical master to the record label, to the publisher. On the other hand, if they're hiring you for your services, they will expect from you to deliver written songs. So you're going to be expected, whether you write them in-house at a publishing company or you write them at home or wherever you're writing them. But the point is, you're going to exercise your services to deliver copyrighted materials, which will be owned by the publisher in the form of songs. So look at the scope of services. What's expected of you? Are you expected to deliver, let's say, 5 albums in 2 years? That may not be a possibility for you. But if you're excited to deliver 1 album over a period of 5 years, that may not be enough for you. So consider what the expectations is in terms of your services. Consider how long it's going to take for you to render those services reasonably, with the understanding that the label is going to provide some support for you now. Something for you may see that's wrapped up on this provision, or at least this type of provision. is an element for touring, and some labels will put some money behind you as an artist to tour, and expectation will be that you will render some services in connection with touring, because nowadays you can't simply record an album and sit there and hope that it sells. And this has actually been doing on a quite a while. You have to promote your album. The labels are going to expect that the artist is going to continue to promote their albums through touring and other venues. So look for that provision in this section of the contract. Okay, guys, that's it. Everything for today. I hope you've learned something new. And at the end, I just wanted to remind you that our 1K giveaway is still running, and you still have chance to join and win 5 great plugins. So if you want to join, it's so simple. Just subscribe to our channel, comment and like our 1K giveaway video, which you can find in our channel, or check on the description below, where I will drop link to the 1K giveaway video. Good luck and see you soon. Bye for now.